and all the speculative speculations.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the SF Masterworks discussions. You heard me, you heard Chris giving me a hard time about something that I also give myself a hard time about the end of it. Anyway, uh, yeah, sorry. We read the SF Masterworks collection, one book every month, and we talk about it here in this discussion group. These are open to anybody interested. So if you'd like to join us, please consider checking out the Patreon forum. We do read them in publication order. In the order they were published as SF Masterworks, not their original publication order, because that would be hard to figure out. Maybe not. Maybe there's a wiki page for it. But regardless, this is the order we're reading them in. So today's discussion is going to be the Time Machine. I thought I brought my Time Machine copy, but apparently I brought Behold the Man. But the others have you covered for the cover. This was actually, when it was first published, apparently, it was published as a bind up of The Time Machine and The War of the Worlds. But we split it up into two discussions. So today is going to be The Time Machine, and next month we'll do The War of the Worlds. The three books coming up after that are going to be Flowers for Algernon for September, Ubik by Philip K. Dick. Sorry, Flowers for Algernon was Daniel Keyes. Ubik, Philip K. Dick for October, and Timescape by Gregory Benford for November. Once again, if you'd like to join us for any of these, please check out the Patreon forum. With me, we have the usual group of friends, and we have a perfect order in which Chris will be last. Susanna, could you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Susanna Imaginário. I'm the author of Timelessness, and I run the tiny YouTube channel Den of the Weird.
Very
And
nice.
I'm Jared, right? I'm next, or is Layla next?
Yes, you're
Okay.
next.
All right, I'm Jared, and I run the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel, and also on Speculation podcasts, and film chewing, and panel chewing, and other stuff on page chewing as well.
Excellent. Layla.
Am I next? Okay.
Yes.
I'm Layla Goshi. I'm a writer. I edit a magazine, Melody Magazine, and I read science fiction and fantasy.
Nice. And Chris?
And I'm Chris from the Chronicle of Chris YouTube channel. I'm from some of the other places that people mentioned beforehand.
Nice. So Time Machine, what did everybody think? Is this the earliest book that we have read?
I think it's the earliest book in the entire Masterworks collection.
Wow.
I think when I did a scan through, I might be wrong about that, but maybe I was doing a quick scan.
1895.
Yeah,
Possibly.
Yeah.
I
It was
look forward to being
originally serialized in New Review magazine between 94 and 95, and then published as a separate novel in 95.
It's not a novel.
Yes, it's a small
Seriously.
pamphlet.
Yeah.
I actually think you put it quite well in your review, Susanna. It is an idea wrapped in some window dressing around the start and around the end, and I think that's pretty apt in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this feels like, the thing that we keep saying that science fiction tends to be, or at least, I don't know. So lately, I think a lot of science fiction is sort of wrapped in some space opera-ish situation as well. But early science fiction, I think, was an expansion of a thought experiment, right? And in this case, you might think by the name that it's an expansion of the thought experiment of what if we were able to travel in time, which it covers to a certain extent, but mostly it's where will we go and how will we end up? Like what does the end of time look like? And maybe does he travel to the beginning? I don't think it does, right? Or
No, it travels to the end.
Yeah, he travels to the end, but he doesn't go back at all. Maybe he's following.
You don't know?
nobody. We don't, as far as me. That's true. Yeah, we haven't
That's
heard him tell a story of him traveling back in time. But yeah, like the sort of logical end of the human race, according to him, logical end of the human race, the logical end of the solar system and so on. It's sort of a thought experiment expounding on that, I think.
Well, we often say that these science fiction books are stories about today, and in this case, it was a story about 1895. And for him, this was about the end of the industrial era and the kind of separation of class and aristocracy in Britain, especially between the underclassmen involved in industry and then the upper classes, and where he sort of, like, to a very extreme view, he says if they keep diverging at the rate that he sees in front of them, this is how they end up, which makes, I think, contextually makes it much more interesting than just a novel to read with characters and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I do agree with that. I noticed the theme of class issues. I think that, first of all, I'll say I really thought this would be a much simpler story. And I always had that impression. I should have read it way before now. So when I really started reading and getting into it, I was really surprised at some of the themes he was trying to go to. So, yeah, I saw that he was basically saying, those, the elite who give themselves a comfortable life will also trap themselves in it. And I thought he had some really interesting things to say about gender within the elite as well. So, yeah, I'll leave that there for the moment. But I thought it was much deeper than I thought, although I agree with Susanna, it's not a novel, but it is. It does give you some pretty deep themes to think about, especially to think that he was applying these themes at that time, where he was really trying to think something out scientifically. Because if you notice, he hasn't really left. He did not include anything about belief systems. Yeah. So it seemed like really focused on the science of it. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, well, the origin of species had been around for a while then, but I think he was really inspired by it. At least it tried to be faithful to the knowledge they had at the time of how species evolved. And then they just focused on the humans because apparently everything else had died. It shows like
that's right.
Yeah, the ecosystem would just not work, but never mind that. It was just interested in human evolution. And I said in my review that it was both kind of simplistic and optimistic as well, like that those were the only paths. Just life was just going to continue consistently. It was a bit naive. I don't know. So unlike Layla, I was disappointed because I was expecting a much more complex story with a lot more going on. Again, I blame the adaptations. I thought that it was going to be, stuff happening, more stops along the way, etc. But no, okay, so that wasn't the case, and the whole thing, we don't hear the story from him. It's through one of his audience, because so he just invited his friends, started telling the story, and they are all educated men, in the fields of science, and there's no discussion, there's no questions, they just take everything. And I was always trying to find a reason for it, or maybe because, the narrator, which we never know the name as well as the protagonist, we don't know the name of the time traveler, if there was something there that he was trying to omit or something, why doing it this way? Just someone narrating what someone had narrated without question, without anything else going on, so they just sat there the whole evening. I don't know, it felt like, and in some aspects it was so stretched, they really tried to stretch the narrative to a degree I think was necessary. And then there was all this left to explore. And I wondered if that was deliberate, if there's something there that I missed. So I was curious to see if you guys, if anything kind of tickled your curiosity or didn't quite feel right.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if Wells was under a word count.
Could
really,
be as simple as that.
because when they print to serialization like that, they get paid per the word, and they want to print a certain amount of words in a serialization. Dickens was famous for that. He put a lot of extra words in his work just to make certain word counts for magazine periodical publications, and I wonder if Wells was under the same kind of stricture as far as that goes. But and I love his conceit towards the why none of these guys in the room could say anything, because he says, "Don't interrupt me, or else I'll forget." And so that
arrogant.
Gives the excuse for nobody to say anything as the story's going on, which it's convenient for the sake of the story, just to get it out. But I thought it was amusing that that's how it goes down. And but I guess this is like my second time reading this. I read this once, maybe 20 years ago, and it actually went very quickly for me this time. Wells, for all the faults of the time, the storytelling and the idea and the scientific thought experiments, he does have a very nice, quick pace and an easy way to just read through it. That didn't bog me down too much. I think I would have been bogged down a little bit. Susanna, you brought up some of the stuff that he threw in there and stuff like that the first time I read it, but the second time I kind of expected it, and I kind of just flew through it. And it's a story that lends itself to a reread, just to get some of those ideas that he throws in there out, especially when he says stuff like he right off the bat he says he gives an explanation, and he says this explanation is plausible enough, as most wrong theories are. So he's allowing you to question his perception on what he's coming across and what he's trying to theorize about what happened in the future and how it came about. So even though he's giving us this, this societal breakdown that Chris mentioned, he's also giving us an out to say he could be wrong. And I kind of like that, because it made it feel a little more whimsical than this serious, science story type thing. And I think it makes it enjoyable.
Yeah, I think the framing narrative of the get together of the men is an interesting one. I think it probably serves a couple of purposes. One, it kind of gives the story an end to every reader, not just people that are interested in reading kind of genre fiction, because its setting and its place is something that everybody can kind of experience, this grouping of men. It also sits within a place which is like an incredibly patriarchal society. Like, men literally ran the world and run the country at that stage, and a lot of those running of the country discussions would have happened in public schools and gentlemen's clubs, in very much like this scenario. So actually these kind of discussions or stories probably have some relevance within that form, that people would have gathered around and listened to what people did that day and kind of used it to influence society and that sort of stuff going around. But it strikes me that this book, kind of more so than any other time travel story around this time, he didn't go into the near future. He went way out there. Like, he went so far out of anybody's kind of relevance of projection, and told the story from that point of view, and kind of so that I think he could strip out a lot of the kind of religious aspects or theological aspects or anything like that, so that he could just tell the bit that he wanted to tell, which was really about the two classes of society and where they'd end up, at an end. There may have been more in between, all that kind of stuff sort of intimated within the story, but it just sort of gave him this out to just tell the simplest story that he possibly could, I think, in a lot of ways. And the best way to do that was probably project forward as far as he could, where the differences would be at the most extreme. But yeah, the whole framing narrative of the gentleman's club, where nobody kind of interrupts him and all of that kind of stuff, gives it just that kind of, for me, the in, so that most people would have started reading the story, and especially if it was being serialized, to stop at a certain point to go, I mean, it's not usually a comfort thing, but I could read more of this, because it's set within the frame of the real world rather than kind of being in year 800,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's interesting. And I also love his little quip against some of the writing conventions of the time. He says, "Had I been a literary man, I might perhaps have moralized upon the futility of all ambition. But as it was, the thing that struck me with the keenest force was the enormous waste of labor to which this somber wilderness of rotting paper testified." I thought that was kind of a little dig at some of his over-wordy contemporaries of the time.
Absolutely.
I really like that.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's a very quotable book. There's, it's well written. So I marked a couple, and with interesting ideas. Sorry, I'm not going to start reading. I just noticed. But so, like Jared said, very easy to read. No complaints there. Just, I wanted more. Just, you just focus it, just narrow down on that. And yeah. But
I think,
but then many others picked, this theme, and it's been explored and expanded. Never gets old.
Right.
Yeah, I think structurally my problem with it was that the first person narrative with practically no other characters sort of bogged me down. I got bored in places. I think at the end of it all, I really appreciated the book and its place in, the influencing of I guess a lot of science fiction. And also I think we've read some that I think we could consider to be in conversation with this. We were talking about this offline a little bit, but Stapleton's works feel very much like almost an homage or a pastiche of this book, right? The two that we have read, the Star Maker and Last and First Men. It sort of tells it from the opposite direction. It way expands the scale, but if structurally, I think they're very similar in terms of how they refer to people, how they theorize about what's going on. And well, I guess the guy in Stapleton's books are looking at it from the future, so they know what happened, but our protagonist is theorizing. So I think it is the foundation and helped other things that became foundations for a lot of science fiction stories. So I appreciate its place, but honestly, if I was reading this for enjoyment, I would have gotten way bored, because it was a single, I think that stuff bores me in general if there's just one person going about their day and that's it. I Am Legend had this also. I think we talked about how when the dog showed up, it made the story move that much faster.
Right.
So I was curious what you all thought about that. Do you find that inherently hard to read like me, or did it work for you nevertheless?
For what it is, it worked for me, because I felt, just like has been previously mentioned, he's kind of I guess you could call him an unreliable narrator. Even I think, Jared, you were the one that said he even says, like, this is my theory, but, but take it with a grain of salt or whatever. And so I just saw it as that was the style he was going with, and then I got into it from there, and started to be aware that what he says he's seeing might not really be what he's seeing. I think that comes out pretty clearly too, so then that's why I took it as is. But I do think there's better ways to write it. I also think he, maybe intentionally as the writer, but the narrator is, kind of dismissive of the above ground group, although they probably, I don't know if they deserve it at this point, but he underestimates them, thinks their fear of the dark is just, maybe superstition or whatever. And so is just running around making all these assumptions about what's really going on. And I think that's intentional by H.G. Wells, and so it's almost a cautionary tale too of don't, go off half-baked with one of our, all of the new inventions that we have, at that time, all of these new scientific concepts and inventions, do we really want to be going off half-baked? Exploring, assuming that we know best. Because he really did act like that. And that's why, is it Weena? That's why she actually got killed. He got her killed, So it was his fault, in my opinion. I don't know if anybody
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. Hopefully not eaten.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, fried up, served. Yeah,
She was
all of that.
definitely
well, she was definitely eating. I don't know what to tell you. They kind of alluded to that darkness earlier on the book. I've quite a lot of thoughts about this, and I kind of made a lot of notes as reading about the Eloi and the Murlocs, and about him specifically placed in the center of it. Because on one hand, he's incredibly critical of the Elois having basically wasted away and let kind of modern life kind of make them the way they are. And he also identifies with the Murloc and the kind of that they're more like him in current society and that kind of stuff. Yet he's afraid of the Murlocs in the story, and he sides with the Elois because they look more representative of him and they are more beautiful and all that kind of stuff. So to me, there is a lot more commentary going on here than just simply, direction of travel for classes. He was basically saying, I think he was being critical of himself. I think H.G. Wells himself was basically saying, actually, in this situation, if I was there, I probably would find myself more comfortable in the Elois because of their non-threatening state, their lack of intelligence. He could be morally superior to them. He didn't have the curiosity and all of that kind of stuff. So I thought that bit was really interesting. And I think if there had been more characters around him, in that case, I think it might have just confused that message or that issue that I think he was trying to basically say that. And if you can put it forward to the kind of cultural issues that we have today, it's still incredibly relevant. And yet it also was the springboard for many other things. Like Aldous Huxley basically took the idea of the Eloi, pushed it forward. Wall-E does exactly the same thing, even much later. These kind of ideas kind of pervade through an awful lot of genre fiction and that kind of stuff going forward. They've taken these ideas that are very short, and what is a very incredibly short book, as we've discussed, but kind of he plants a few seeds there in much the way as we were talking about, as if he had been speaking in front of all of those men. Just kind of tell the story, jack off, jump in your ship, and go again. I'm away. I mightn't be back, guys, and then they're left to wonder about what if and where he could be and all of that kind of stuff. So I found that really the crux of the entire book is that kind of self-criticism that he has of himself and of human nature and to who they would side with and deal with, and this idea that being afraid of the dark, he's not afraid of the dark, but he's afraid of what's in the dark because of some of the things that he's seen that are against civilization. That he sees evidence of cannibalism. He sees evidence of being tactus, kind of being touched, not knowing what's touching in the dark. He feels the hands on him and all that kind of stuff. And that fire, it's very primal instinct that just, as far as my savior here. Like, he is a time traveler. He's invented a time travel machine. And yet, in this scenario, in this space, I need fire, I need matches.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah. He also riles at the matches at some point, like those infernal kind that only light on the box.
Yeah, that's right.
And I was like, is there other kind?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, sorry, go ahead, Jared.
No, that's some great points, Chris. I really like that. But I like the premise he starts out with. Like his scientific premise for the whole time travel thing when he right in the first chapter is this whole idea of, well, in space we can move this way, we can move that way, and which way does time move? And so that's like the whole premise of him inventing this time machine, and that it's going to move in a direction that did not previously exist or people wondered about. And it just reminds me of because it reminds me that people were thinking about time in the fourth dimension in the 19th century in all kinds of different ways. And I think it was about a decade or two before this book when Abbott came out with Flatland. That was a novel about two-dimensional creatures, basically.
Right.
And they could only, see on they only existed on a flat surface. And it was a fascinating little novel that explored that aspect of dimension. And so there was a lot of speculation during this time about dimension and what it does and stuff like that. And that ties into, of course, all the scientific experiments and progress that was made in all different aspects of physics and chemistry and what have you. And I like how that's all put right in the first chapter, and then he just cavalierly goes off and uses the technology without any kind of further experimentation or anything like that. It just boom. And I think it's Wells just kind of saying, we're inventing this stuff, and then we're carelessly using technology. We just run away with it, and damn the consequences. And so it was just I just found that fascinating. I find books like this fascinating from that time period for that very reason, because they're all very similar in how they approached technology and stuff back then. And I think Wells did it probably better than most, which is why he's still around today.
And really, I came away feeling like, well, maybe he's not that wrong in terms of the even whatever class level we think we're at. If we've got these days an iPhone and all of these gadgets and things that we use that make our life easier. Are we more like the Eloi, or are we more like the Morlocks? And there is a lot of criticism of that, of technology making us, soft, so to speak. And so I felt like, he's not wrong in projecting some of this, or more likely it's that is what, are the criticisms now really just recent criticisms, or has there been that undercurrent all this time of, how, technology providing easier lives will take something away from us. So it just raised that question in my mind, and there was one other thing that I thought was really, well, it was all interesting to me for that regard. Back to the gender thing, I really felt like, he said in the, like for the Eloise, that there was really not, it was like they were all children and not really with male and female roles like you would expect at that, within their time frame. But again, I think we have come to a place where we're questioning male and female roles. So again, was that something he was just starting to see the beginning of? Was that a conversation happening then that has, in one way or another, come back, during this time period? So I do think he expressed some things that we are still talking about now. Or maybe the concepts are now coming into prominence again. But there was really, to me, there was something there about that. I also thought it was just kind of funny. I've been looking, I thought I highlighted the phrase, but there's a phrase in there where he said, "I'm not a communist." Does it?
Where was that?
When I look up communist, I get like multiple hits out of my H.G. Wells collection. So that must have been a real issue for him. But I just thought it was just interesting that he would insert that. And I'll try to see if I can find.
Yeah, he's on that. He said he looked around the landscape and there wasn't a bunch of like different little houses. There was only one house where everybody lived, and he called that communism.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that part.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, interesting.
Which was kind of hilarious because like communism wasn't back then what we know it is as today.
Yeah.
And so it was a completely different thing to the people of this time than what we think of it as. And so
he was being literal.
Amusing. Yeah, he was being literal. Yeah, right. Exactly. It's amusing. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to touch on the science aspects, because I really enjoyed that part as well, how he set up the framing of it, because he didn't go too far into it, but he just kind of left a couple of little notes in it, basically. And the bit that really struck home with me, I actually made a note of it, and my thing was to basically say, like, we talk about what will be Euclidean geometry, kind of the world in 3 dimensions, so the up, down, left, right, the X, Y, Z plane. But we don't really use the Y plane or the Z plane. And when they was talking about that, he was talking about the fact that we don't go up and down off the land in the earth at all. And they said, apart from balloons. Now, again, you think back to 1895 and think back to now, and our verticality of the land is very different in a relationship to that.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show within 50 years how quickly technology advanced from that point where they were basically going left and right, essentially across the land, to then being vertical off it, and then him postulating, well, what difference is time in that discussion? And he sort of left at that as sort of introducing, like, just the possibility, just enough rationale that this could be possible and doable, and let the discussion happen after that. If people want to discuss the book, and as we've often said through an awful lot of these series of books, a lot of the best writers have that bit where they just plant an idea and let us discuss it. In this case, 130 years later or whatever it is, just kind of throw it out there, and you can go for the nuts and bolts of whether it's realistic, not realistic, but it's just postulating an idea, and away you go. And he does the same with gender politics, he does the same with class, he does the same with all those other stuff. And for a first published book, it's way more ambitious. Like, I think narratively, absolutely right, it doesn't read great. It's not like a turn the page, a thrill a minute. It reads well, but it's not a thrilling book, but it puts an awful lot of ideas on a page. And I can see why people would have gravitated towards this as a style of writing, because you want to read the book. Short book, come away with the whole other days that you think and stew over the next kind of weeks, months, or whatever. It's the kind of things that people would like to write papers on, I'd imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and like with Stapleton, I didn't find some of his analysis or conclusions, or I guess the assumptions behind them palatable, but they were jumping off points for our own ideas and thought processes. There was something I was going to say. Yeah, I I had to go digging because I don't know. I I thought wrongly that Einstein came up with all the ideas that support relativity. But no, they were talking about like time in a fourth dimension way before that. And I think those all fed into his eventual theory, maybe. But like I had to go looking to see since when that has been a thing. I think it was 1700s even. But yeah, so I like it, maybe this story even fed into Einstein's imagination. I don't know, but this was a yeah, that was a little eye-opening for me, that conversation at the beginning about the fourth dimension of time.
Oh, something existed before Einstein. I didn't know that.
Dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs.
You know, speaking of other themes, this is different, but when I first started reading it, I thought, it sounded like he was describing the Shire, and then when the Morlocks came along, I'm like, wait a minute, let me go back and look at these publication dates, So now I'm wondering if I've always assumed those were original themes and motifs of J.R.R. Tolkien. Are they broader, I guess tropes, fantasy tropes? Well, I guess the little people and elves maybe. So I just kind of noticed, I can't even say shadows of Tolkien because Tolkien came afterward, but when I first started reading it, I thought, oh, what's this, So just wanted to throw that out there. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, but there was a ton of 19th century literature that had, shires and little people, and so that wasn't anything new. That by the time that this came around, there was a whole bunch. Yeah.
Yeah, because essentially it's the idea of underclass people. The people that are living in the smaller houses, that even in the industrial area, the fact that when they basically, the reason those houses existed is because industry built those houses so that people would be close to the factory. Like they weren't kind of coming from far away. That's the whole history of that socioeconomic kind of world. So, I mean, it kind of builds off that. People lived huddled and lived together in small places close to the ground and that kind of stuff. Things that were easy to build.
Even the Morlocks are like Gollum, come to think of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a YouTube video.
Did have a time machine. Who knows?
There's Tolkien stole all of Lord of the Rings. God damn it. Galadriel is an Eloy. Oh.
Yeah. I remember because I saw one of those movies, one of those time machine movies, when I was younger, when I was a kid, and at the time, the Morlocks really scared the hell out of me. Like they were frightening. Now you look back on them and you kind of laugh at them, but yeah. So it was. It's more interesting now reading this as an older person that I am, that with experience under your belt and realizing that the Morlocks symbolize a bit more than just underground cannibals, and and that they symbolize kind of the downtrodden masses of his time, and how they're viewed by a lot of people at that time, and they're not they're viewed as people to be lived over, to be stepped on, to be and they're fighting against this perceived civilized light, and the symbolism there is pretty cool for the
Yeah.
for the this small pamphlet that we just read through.
Pamphlet. What was I going to say? Never mind. I wasn't going to say anything.
There's another YouTube video. The greatest pamphlet ever written.
Yes.
Question mark.
I want to go back real quick to his end. He was really drawing out what scientifically, the thought is of what the end of the world is, which I thought was, knowing now it was written in 1895, I find that really astounding that he did write that, because it goes against the grain of so many belief systems. So I find that notable. I'm not saying he's right, but because the only reason I'm saying I don't know if he's right is because I really, frankly, haven't looked into it, and most of my impressions from sci-fi is that something like that happens. The sun becomes a red star and envelops the earth, sort of thing. So I just found that really fascinating that he gave that alternative framework for the end of the world.
Well, so you find that most sci-fi books that write about dystopia there are not doing it because they believe that they're maybe accurate projections, but that they're kind of almost like warning shots. If we don't change the direction of society now, this is where we could end up, which makes for interesting stories, for interesting words, or interesting thought experiments. And there's another YouTube video. H.G. Wells invented the dystopia genre because that is sort of what he's doing in a lot here. This is quite a bleak future. This is quite a bleak idea that some forms of humanity will have to eat people because they didn't think about animals, and they didn't want animals. They thought animals were no good, but people needed meat or whatever. It's quite dark, literally and figuratively, within this book, and this idea that they would have to go underground in order to support whatever style of life that they wanted to, or where they were allowed to build, or whatever it is. He never goes into the reasons why. I think one of the other interesting aspects of that is, again, him coming. He's a man of science. He's a man of progress, and yet, once he goes to the future, the only thing that he's concerned about is finding his toy, his time machine. Mm-hmm. He's got a very capitalist mindset in that term. Mm-hmm. Not that he's there as an explorer, but as soon as he gets there and he can't find a ship, he needs to find the ship. He's not looking for love or anything like that. He does save the girl, but he's not interested in building anything with that. And in an anthropological way, he's not like you would think that that's what the focus of his life would be. And yet it was about, I need to get my ship back because it's mine and it's going to enable me to look and explore further, kind of thing. So it becomes a very capitalist mindset. And that's why I think it's sort of self-critical of himself, because I think he's putting himself in those shoes going, oh, if I had built this time machine, I'd want to do all this cool stuff. But in actual fact, I think we would waste the opportunity, just like the Eloy would do, because of the comfort and the opportunity that it gives me. I'm more excited by the opportunity than actually the using of it, which I think is an interesting thought experiment around that as well.
Yeah, I love that point. Also, his emotional behavior at the loss.
Mm-hmm.
Very much so.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of his lifeline to his life. It didn't. I don't think he was seeing itself as he was traveling. He was a tourist. He didn't intend to stay. When that became a possibility, suddenly his role became very appealing. The past became very appealing.
He's traveling and he lost his passport.
Yeah, kind of. It's like, I need to get it back.
Yeah. But that idea of grounding her home definitely strikes you, doesn't it? Because he can go anywhere, any place in time, and yet he just wants to get back. He has to make sure that he's got a way to get back home to this rudimentary lifestyle, if he wants to think that, given the possibilities that he has. I think it's an interesting feeling, and I think it's sort of echoed in the reader, because I think we as the reader kind of go, "Well, this is cool and all, but what if I couldn't live the life that I'm living right now?" Is the thing. It's okay for do part time or whatever, but would you want to do it long term? I think for a lot of people the answer is no, because you would be that fish out of water.
Yeah, but he does come back, and he does get frustrated. He's like, "Oh, you guys don't believe me? The hell with you!" And he takes off again. And
with a camera, so he can get pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So who knows where that goes? But that's part of the fun that Wells put into it, is making us wonder what's going to happen next. I think
Sorry, go ahead.
I think it's kind of amazing how like this is one of the first time travel things I know about, and it's the one that everybody, of course, refers back to. And he went far into the future. There's been so many time travel stories of people going back to the past to find out what happened. Look at Behold the Man. You held that up earlier. Everything's about going back into the past to find out what happened. And the original one is about going to the end. And and I find that fascinating that so many stories have focused on going back, and in opposition to what this was doing.
And it's kind of, I want to say, clever in doing that, in that it doesn't grapple with all the existential questions that come out of traveling back in time, like, did I cause the events or did I change them, and so on and so forth.
The paradox.
Which I think, like Chris said earlier, keeps the topic focused on, I think, what he really wants to say, not the time machine bit, but about the evils of society at the time of writing, and where they'll go from there. I think there was something I forgot. Never mind. Today's just my day to forget everything I wanted to say.
Time travel stories that go into the past, they are redemption stories. So it's always about fixing something, about finding out something that would help you in the present. Now that definitely is not what he's doing. When you go forward, it's either a cautionary tale or it's just an exploration of places or ideas, and then that's the direction he took. It's an interesting point, because most time travel stories are going to the past because of the narrative that it's not about the science of it, it's about the narrative and all the problems that might come with it. And no, he completely eliminated that kind of words. He was just focused on the science, on going to find out where it ends, how it ends, how long are you going to stay here. And it's a theme throughout, when he realizes that intelligence, it was so fleeting in humanity because of the way that they become complacent with their lives. And but not only that humanity itself, it was fleeting, because he stops before the end and he's kind of attacked by crab thing or whatever, but there were no more humans. The animals were back. That was interesting. There was something, but there were no humans. So we were just this little blip. And I guess it is something to consider, because we take everything for granted. And the more comforts we have, the more we take things for granted, because we stop innovating, we stop creating new things, because we have no more problems to solve. And that's, we stagnate. There's no evolution if there's no challenge. And I think that was what they were realizing at the time, 30 years after the publication of the Origin of Species, and I have time to kind of digest it. And I'm sure they would still be arguing about it. They still are today. But anyway, there was enough time to speculate. How long are we here? we've been here for just this long compared with the rest of the world. How much longer, can we sustain this as a species?
Mhm.
So I was hoping for an answer or a bit more, but no, it leaves everything open, which is fine. It's fine. We've been trying to answer that, for the last 130 years. That's fine.
I think it's interesting too, the fact that he came back to describe all that he learned, and that the establishment essentially did not believe him, which is true. It's hard to bring a new idea into the establishment, so to speak. So the more I think about it, the more I think he really hit on a lot of important themes. And yeah, I wish he had drawn it out more. But at the same time, I don't really fault what he did say. I think it does give us a lot to chew on in that regard. So, and you all helped me realize that a lot of time travel stories always seem to have, the protagonist always seems to, if they're going back in time, there's always this sense that, they've got a little more power, than who they're going to see, even if they get caught in a trap or get, somehow messed up. So I wonder if that's why there's more interest or more written in, going back in time, that sense of wanting to see that empowered character and how they would, interact given all that they know now, but I'm interested now in exploring more futuristic stories like that.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I'm thinking of I don't know, the one that comes to mind is a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court, where he has knowledge of when an eclipse is about to happen, and then uses it to say to pretend that he's causing the eclipse, and makes himself a greater wizard than Merlin. Anyway, seemed to be. But yeah, I think that's a good note to close the discussion on. Were there any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
Oh, I'm glad I finally read it. So now I know.
Me too.
It's another tick for a book that was exactly as long as it needed to be,
Yes.
and didn't need to be
Thank you.
1,100 pages of drawing it out. I actually think that we sort of said this a little last night when we were talking kind of off camera. Like, the idea that he had it for One World Here is something that ultimately Stapleton took for Last and First Men and Star Maker, where he did this over and over again. And at a certain point, for both those books wore out their welcome for me with having too many ideas, and therefore I couldn't kind of pull together a lot of the themes that he was going for, as brilliant as a lot of them are. And having this as being a 2-sit and read, as it was for me, it just did enough that it needed to. It definitely, for me, could have done with a bit of truncating at the start, a bit of truncating at the end, and just give me the bulk of what was there. But it still was only a 2-sit and read. It was very quick, easy to read for me. So, it obviously didn't matter that much. But the nuts and bolts of it is the bit of the story that he had here was exactly long as it needed to be. I didn't want him to spend another 3 years in the Murlocs and Eloy kind of dragging out kind of nuances in there, because that wasn't what was interesting about that story for me.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I think I talked earlier about how I got slightly bored through some of it, but it was okay because I knew that it was a short book.
That helps.
Yeah. And yeah, like Stapleton again, like the ideas are immense, but it reads often like a history book, which this one does too. I think to a certain, like, not quite a history book, but a news, I guess a reportage book maybe. But this one, yeah, it works. I'm glad to have read it too. I think I've been meaning to for the longest time, and it's done. Any last thoughts, Jared?
I'm good.
Okay,
Read it
then
again. Read it again in another 20 years and tell me what you think.
another 20 years. Okay, sounds good to me.
I have a
Eh,
fly.
mhm. Oh, you have a fly.
I
I thought
have
of
the
your
most
cat.
persistent fly, and she loves the camera. Sorry.
Do you have a cat? I just don't know.
Yeah. Didn't the cat go by or something? Or...
Oh, yeah.
Me?
hmm
yeah.
No,
Did you?
no,
No.
Oh,
okay.
okay. Oh, you
no.
only have a dog.
I have
Okay.
two dogs and
okay.
the fly, a fan.
Oh,
All right. And once again, the book for next month is going to be War of the Worlds, also by H.G. Wells. And then after that, we'll read Flowers for Algernon for September, Ubik by Philip K. Dick for October, and then a Gregory Bedford book called Timescape. Yes, I remember all of that without needing to look up again because
What a pro.
I closed it by accident. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon. Bye.